Yeah. Yeah.
And welcome into another episode of the Damn Podcast, powered by BeaverBlitz.com and 24/7 Sports. I am joined, as always, by Angie Machado of BeaverBlitz.com, and this week by a special guest. We're bringing on Trevor Denton, the sports anchor and reporter at KVAL and KMTR in Eugene. Trevor is on hand at Oregon State football practice with Angie and I on the regular, so we're primed for a fun conversation about Oregon State fall camp.
I'm pumped up. You both know that I listen to this on my way to camp. It's like my final primer that I get. This is almost like a dream come true for me, you know? This is amazing.
And it's so fun to have a guest. Yay. I'm so glad you're on with us.
Yeah, I think we're going triple box here if you're watching us live on YouTube. You can listen to us, of course, on your favorite podcast app. And a big announcement from Angie and I's world. We are joining the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network. So this is our first episode as a member of the new network. If you're listening on the podcast side, you might hear a few changes, some ads here and there, some new cover art. And we think we have everything set up properly. There might be a few kinks that we have to work out. So bear with us there if everything is a little messed up for a week or so. But behind the scenes, we're working hard to get all of that sorted out. It's exciting because on the Beaver Blitz website, on the front page, we'll be able to pin all of our recent podcasts. You can, listen to us along with all of your other favorite 24/7 sports podcasts. It's a fun time. A lot of stuff is happening at 24/7 Sports, and Trevor, we're super excited to have you on for this maiden voyage on the new network.
I'm honored again. I mean, you're starting a brand new era. You said you got to work out some kinks, but you're perfect all the time, Carter. I believe in you guys. You guys do incredible work. And, feels like we already kind of do our own podcast sitting in the stands at all these practices, chatting back and forth. So being able to do it in a more formal setting is very exciting. Excited about your guys' new era going on.
The knowledge that is dropped at practice is like pretty awesome.
It's awesome that we actually get this on the record and have people listen to it, because seriously, some of the conversations we have when we're watching practice, it's like, we'll cover topics from, like in-depth what we're watching at that point to just random stuff about, our memories from going to the LA Bowl together, staying at the same media hotel and whatnot. Trevor, we are super excited to have you. Just a quick rundown of what we're going to cover with Trevor here today. He was on hand at the scrimmage with Angie and I, Oregon State's first scrimmage of fall camp on Saturday. We were at Reser Stadium for the third time last week. I think they practiced in Reser about half of last week.
Yeah.
Trevor and I actually did a walkthrough of the Completing Reser Stadium project on Tuesday. So we're going to touch on that later in the show, what we saw, kind of what we heard from some of the people who are walking us through, and people who are familiar with the project. There's some noteworthy stuff coming out of there. Some just miscellaneous camp updates. We'll talk a little bit of realignment. Trevor's going to plug his USC roots, fight on.
I wasn't going to do the fight on, but since you guys are doing it, I'm just joining the crowd. I was going to refrain.
We'll touch a little bit on the Pac-12, get some predictions there. And then there are a few baseball notes that we want to cover from the Oregon State alumni doing big things in the pro ranks. But first of all, let's start with that scrimmage that we watched on Saturday. We're recording this on Sunday, August 14th, so we're a day removed. We've had a little bit of time to kind of think about what we saw. Angie and I both wrote a practice report at BeaverBlitz.com, and I know Trevor was covering it down in Eugene. Let's start with Angie. I want to get your thoughts here as the Beaver Blitz publisher. I'll let you have the first crack at this. Just some of your main takeaways from the first scrimmage of camp.
As the old lady here, covering the team. At the defense, so no touchdowns. I think by now it's kind of out there that the Beavers offense, none of the Beavers offenses, first, second, third, fourth team scored any touchdowns. So I think that's significant, but I don't read too much into it in that this is a bad thing. You always want your defense to be dominating early on. And we haven't seen that, quite frankly, from Oregon State defenses the past 6-7 years. So the defense looks very good offensively. I think they'll gel and they'll come together. But I was blown away with the defense and just the aggression we're seeing, play loose. I mean, we could go through all the things the players have been telling us about playing under Trent Bray, but you can tell that they're actually playing, having fun, and they're able to play aggressive.
I agree. I think it was the defense that won the day. Actually, if obviously it was a close scrimmage to the public, but Oregon State tweeted out and posted on Instagram a little highlight reel from practice, and I watched it, and I think the thing that stood out was that it was like all defensive plays. You saw some takeaways, some sacks, obviously no touchdowns, as Angie mentioned. So the public got a little glimpse of the scrimmage there. A couple of plays I want to highlight before we get Trevor's thoughts. Skylar Thomas and Jack Conne both came down with interceptions. Matthias Malachi Donaldson, a true freshman, actually closed the scrimmage with a sack on the very final play. I thought the running backs, who we have touted very highly at BeaverBlitz, were bottled up around the line of scrimmage by the defensive line with regularity. So it was all levels of the defense standing out. And Trevor, I want your thoughts on, first of all, what you saw, but also, are you concerned or excited about the fact that the defense was so dominant at this point in camp?
Yeah, first of all, I'm looking at my notes right now. I have them scribbled here. You can't possibly read my handwriting. They're not as detailed as the notes that you two make, but I'm just looking at it, and it's contested short catch. It's good contained by the D. It's big hit. It's big breakup. It's sacked by 29. It's the good offensive plays are like nice check down or nice 5-yard pass. They just weren't doing anything down the field. We spoke to John McCartan afterwards. He's been a really good teammate. He was like, they moved the ball. We made some mistakes. They didn't make that many mistakes. There was one drive deep into the red zone, and they made a 4th down stop. I asked them about the character of the defense, classic bend but don't break stuff. But Angie, you're spot on. They look like a team that has now had a full kind of off season under Trent Bray. Like, his influence has really taken hold. They're jumping, flying over the field. In terms of what this actually means, obviously I get why Beavers fans are encouraged by the defense doing well. You just do want to see more from the quarterbacks, though. I'm not seeing anybody process the field that quickly. Even Chance Nolan's probably looked the best as the starter, but even he, I feel like in those red zone drills is processing things a little bit too slow, taking a little too long to kind of go through his reads there. So I'm a little bit concerned by the quarterback play, but the area of optimism that I think I have is, we'll talk about the quarterbacks a ton. Everyone's going to talk about the shortcomings of the quarterbacks, but the most shocking thing is that the O-line's been getting beat off the line of scrimmage, and that's just not going to happen for the rest of camp. That group has such high standards. They self-police themselves. I was watching glued on the sideline to Michalczyk and Brandon Kipper, and they were kind of undressing the entire unit, like being like not laying into each other, but very much Michalczyk was making clear this is not our standards. This is not the type of football we play. And I think that's an encouraging sign for Beavers fans, because that's not going to continue with this unit. I feel like they have too high standards.
Did you catch Michalczyk grab the whole unit and bring him over and just he really didn't seem panicked. He just said, guys, what I'm seeing is we're not playing fast. And that's kind of what I think he's going to be hitting home. But you're right. It starts and ends up front. And I never thought I'd say that, see it this quickly, that the Oregon State defensive front was beating the offensive front.
No,
yeah, it's been happening. Yeah. And even in the run game, there's been some great pass rushes. Even when on Tuesday, I think it was, they were doing one-on-one pass block drills. They were getting beat on those. So I just don't think the O-line has quite showed up yet. I asked Michalczyk about the physicality on that day on Tuesday, and he said, it was okay, but it wasn't up to our standards. And I think that's a big story for me for camp so far. It's not just the quarterbacks, it's the O-line too, not getting it done yet.
Yeah, and I think those are two positions that, we saw them play at a high level at times last year. Obviously, the offensive line for a span of probably 11 games and quarterback for about half the year. So I think I have confidence that we're going to see high-level play from those positions again this year. So in my opinion, it's actually a great sign that the defense is dominating at this point in camp, because I think that speaks more to the improvement that Trent Bray has brought on that side of the ball than any potential weaknesses from key positions on offense. And, usually in fall camp and even in the spring too, as you're starting to work newcomers in and unlock the playbook a little bit, it is very common to see the defense win in the first scrimmage. It's very common to see the defense be the side that's making big plays in the first week or two of camp every year. And I think one thing that concerned us in the past was that we didn't really see that at Oregon State. It was always the offense that was making the big plays. It was the running backs who were carrying the ball for 50 yards every day. The fact that we're seeing Damian Martinez, Deshaun Fenwick, Trey Lowe bottled up at the line, and sacks on the regular and interceptions every day. The fact that we haven't seen that before just makes me believe that it's more a sign of the defense taking a step forward than the offense regressing. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I still, what we need to see from the offense is consistency. And that's what, no matter who the quarterback is, no matter who those wide receivers, especially, we need to see consistency. And so, but I do agree that we are seeing that defense. I got into it a little bit today with a Duck fan, and he kind of was touting about the no TDs. And I said, well, at this point in camp, you want your defense to, he didn't really agree, but I threw out Utah. I'm like, honestly, if you have a good to great defense and an average to good offense, you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, that was Utah's recipe for success last year. I think to an extent, the recent Oregon teams we've seen, they've taken a huge step forward defensively, and the offense hasn't been the high flying units that we saw under Chip Kelly and the big breakout from Oregon football. They've been more of a defensive minded team recently, and that has won games for very good teams in the Pac-12.
Yeah, and Oregon's done that with really good secondaries too, and that's one big takeaway I had is like maybe the secondary is everything it's hyped up to be. Like some players are calling it one of the best in the Pac-12, and they've really made things, I think, confusing for the receivers. We talked to Lindsey. He's like, man, they're throwing so many different looks at us, and we're just not being ourselves out there. I think you could see the receivers almost thinking out on the field and just not finding the open space. And, I think, again, that's a testament to Trent Bray. I think they've absorbed that system probably more than the offense is in sync right now. The defense just feels a lot more in sync. And that defensive back group is only going to make the receiver group better because they have more proven guys.
Yeah, and think about when they get Alton Julian back. I mean, Carter and I talk on the way down and the way back, and you think about some of those guys we've seen from Ryan Cooper, the play that he's been showing. It seems weird to say, but Jaden Grant could be the odd man out and not be a starter. And I don't want to say that because he'll probably be a starter, but he may not get the minutes that some of those other guys get.
It's hard to imagine a world where everybody gets the playing time that they deserve in that defensive backfield, just because there are so many guys who, and we've talked about this on the pod. We've, written about it at BeaverBlitz. There are so many guys in that room that I just think there are more starting caliber guys and potentially more all conference guys than there are starting spots, which is a great problem to have. I'm sure Blue Adams and Anthony Perkins are absolutely loving the weaponry that they have in that room. But at the end of the day, they have to put the team in the best position to win. And it's difficult to know how to do that when you have 4 guys at safety who I think are worthy of starting, more than 2 guys at corner, and Oregon State loves to run nickel, and we've seen like 3 guys running at that position too. So I don't even know how you begin to address that situation if you're one of those coaches, but I think it's part of the reason why we expect this to be a breakout year from the defense. And one of the reasons why those guys are talking about the defensive backfield being one of the best in the conference and being something that Oregon State's run to a potential Pac-12 title, which is their goal, their self-proclaimed goal, why that runs through that group.
My favorite guy to watch so far, too, on that defensive back group is Catan. Catan Oladapo has been all over the place. Is it a stretch to say he looks like Cam Chancellor out there? He's big, he's beefy, he's like the most physically imposing guy on the team. But I've seen a difference with him in play speed, I feel like, this year. He's been all over the field. Chance Nolan singled him out without being prompted. I practiced the other day and was like, man, that guy's making life difficult. He seems to be all over the field. He might be the biggest breakout in that group. Had a solid year yesterday, had that really nice pick in the LA Bowl, but he's looked as maybe the sharpest to me. Just in my practice notes, I'm writing his number down a ton. I've really liked his play so far.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think Catan's had a good year. I guess if I was to pick a standout right now, I would go with Silas Bolden, wide receiver. Another breakout, kind of guy. Had a huge spring game, but we've been talking about Silas a ton the past couple weeks.
Yeah, so I mean, we're kind of jumping into this next section, and I think we should definitely go for it here and just mention some of the guys who have stood out, just the individuals across the board, who we have picked as our kind of mid-camp standouts, MVPs at this point. Angie, you hit the nail on the head with Silas Bolden. I have said to you, and I can't remember, I think it might have been in our Twitter space earlier in the week, I think Silas Bolden's a star in the making. I think he could be the next big receiver at Oregon State. Not physically. He's not a big guy physically. But I think the next big name, following in the footsteps of his brother Silas, who is now with the Arizona Cardinals after standing out in the USFL.
Victor Bolden, his brother, not Silas.
Victor Bolden, sorry.
Put some respect on the USFL championship game MVP. Come on. He's looking great for the Cardinals. Yeah. He's making catches left and right.
Yeah, but no, it's awesome to see the bloodlines continue to be. It's, Oregon State, I think, is one of those programs that has benefited. I mean, look at the Rogers brothers, the Hodgins brothers, and now the Boldens, just the next in that long line.
Nashawn and Rajon, yeah.
No doubt. But you're talking about that receiver room, and I think everybody kind of has the same mentality of who's going to step up and be that go-to guy. It feels like a lot of B pluses, a lot of A minuses, but who's going to be the A plus? Who's going to be the go-to guy that it's 3rd and 8? Who are we going to go to? It feels like Musgrave might be that guy right now, but you want to also have that in a receiver position. I think I've probably been the most impressed by Silas and Trayshawn so far, but there's a lot of talent in that room that doesn't feel like it's fully refined yet. What's Dunmore going to do? I like Micaiah Tongue. He's had really good days and days like the scrimmage where I didn't really see too much from him. So who's going to be that other consistent guy? Can they have multiple go-to guys? Jonathan Smith says they have multiple go-to guys, but I haven't fully seen that yet. I haven't fully seen someone grab that position by the horns and be like, I'm the guy on 3rd and 8. What do you guys think about that?
Hey, Trevor, what do you think?
You got it. Every anchor always calls me Trent, so it's normal. I'm used to it.
What do you think of Tyjon? I was getting Tyjon in my head. So Tyjon Lindsey, we heard from him Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day that was, and he said all the right things. But do you think he's really going to step up and make it? I mean, this is his last year. Does he do it, or do you think we see more inconsistency from him?
I don't know. He did say all the right things, but it was also, some things that you don't normally hear from a player that was like, maybe I wasn't hitting up class enough. Maybe I wasn't focused on football 24/7 in the past. He came across like a guy that has learned a lot in his kind of journeyman career of transferring, coming to Oregon State. So maybe it all clicks for him, but it feels like, this is often the case at Oregon State, but there's sometimes a size problem when you can have a couple guys that are 5'9" and kind of that slot role, but you don't want all of them to be like that. I want someone a little taller. That's why I think Micaiah is kind of like the X factor here, because he's physically imposing. You can't have everyone be 5'9". I think Tyjon's going to be a great player, but who's going to be that outside threat? That's what I'm really looking for right now.
One name I'll throw out there too that people at BeaverBlitz have been clamoring for, they want to see him on the field more, is Jimmy Velson, who came in from Texas. He's a big framed guy. I believe he's about 6 feet tall. One of the taller receivers on the roster, and actually has started to take some reps with the first and second team groups in practice. He was in there a ton during the scrimmage yesterday. So good to see him out there. I don't know if he's ready to step into that big, go-to downfield target role that we expect from a guy with his stature, but I think his height adds something to the mix, and to your point, Trevor, adds a little bit of a variety to a group that is really loaded with a lot of smaller, more speed-oriented guys. But on
it's not like Oregon State's never won. It's not like Oregon State's never won with those guys. It's just you want to have a couple guys that you could throw it up to on the outside. And I really think right now, as we sit in camp, that guy's Musgrave, and we saw that he was the chain mover against Oregon. When push came to shove against, maybe the best defensive back group that they went against besides like Utah or whatever. It was Musgrave. That was the guy that they went to on like 3rd and 5. So let's just see, who else is going to step up. I thought Trayshawn had a really good scrimmage. comparatively, if we're speaking about how bad the offense did, he was the guy that kind of stood out there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. That's a really fascinating group because I think it's deep, but it's not necessarily top heavy right now.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think we do see more tight ends. I think Musgrave, if he can build on what he did at the end of last season, I think that'll be big, and because he had the dropsies there, a while, but Overman I think is in the mix, and watch for redshirt freshman JT Byrne. We're seeing
That's
a
what I
lot
was
of
going to
him.
say.
Yeah. So those guys, Oregon State doesn't have those USC receivers, those 6'3" guys that can, run super fast. So look for some of those tight ends to step into.
Yeah,
Byrne had
no
a
Drake
crazy
London
day
on this team.
He did. He had a really good
Drake
game.
London. Byrne, he had I think the lone deep pass and then got free on 2 other ones and just was missed. But it's like this guy's getting 30 yards of separation right now. He was probably the most impressive tight end, I'd say, in that scrimmage to answer that question.
Like you said, Trevor, too, it wasn't like Oregon State wasn't moving the ball, but they would move it in little chunks and then find themselves in 3rd and long, and they just couldn't sustain anything.
Yeah. We're touching on Jared Hooper's question here from the YouTube chat. Who's the second best receiving tight end on the team behind Musgrave? Is it Jake Overman? JT Byrne, I think, is a great call by you guys. Just another one of those really talented young guys, those true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, 2nd, 3rd year guys who haven't really gotten a look in the offense yet because they've been buried behind so many talented players like Tegan Quatoriano, Luke Musgrave, going back to Noah Tongiai as well. Some guys who are, I think, key to this offense preventing a step back. Oregon State needs some play from the tight ends, and it can't just be Musgrave because for the last couple of years, the offense has been designed around having multiple tight ends who can both block and receive. So Jake Overman, I think, is my pick to take that next step. He's shown us the most over the last couple of years and into this year. But JT Byrne, too, I think his frame, if we're talking about guys who just look athletic, he's very similar to Luke Musgrave in that you put him out there on the field and he just looks like a guy who's gonna run you over. Somebody who's going to create a matchup nightmare for linebackers and DBs downfield. I'm
going to give my dark horse too, Gabe Milborn.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree with that one.
Like
and
that.
He's been on the 2 deep in practice for 2 years now. A guy who I think is part of that mix of redshirt freshman who's looking to make the next step, and I think could be a big part in why this tight end group is so good now and will continue to be good in the future.
So with Tegan gone,
the fact that there's so much young talent there.
Yeah, sorry. Just with Tegan gone, who do you guys think is the best blocking guy right now? Because obviously that's so important in this offense.
It's a good question. I mean, you'd like to think that Musgrave is, just because he's been there for a couple of years and has really emphasized that part of his game. But I don't think Oregon State can afford to use him as a blocker because they're going to need him for his receiving ability, and they're going to need him to perform at the level that they saw the last couple of games of last year. So I think if you're looking for a guy who's going to step into that blocking role, I think that's where one of those redshirt freshmen could really separate themselves and say, hey, I bring this to the team that, maybe not all of the other guys do. Maybe some of those guys are more focused on catching the ball. And I think that's where JT Byrne's stature is just a big guy. If he has that tactical ability as a blocker, I'd like to see them use him there.
Who I think is going to be, and this is going back to another guy that Trevor mentioned, not really a tight end, but he's kind of a wide receiver, tight end, wide receiver. Tongue. Great blocker.
Yeah.
Machado
Great
Tongue
blocker.
is a great blocker. So,
and that's how he's gotten on the field, right? I mean, so that'll get you opportunities in this offense with all the outside running you do. You have to have receivers that are willing to mix it up. So that's a real ticket on the field. We're not allowed to name the one guy, that also is involved. Are we
the one guy
allowed to say anything? the man with the nickname, the rhymes with Yammer. Are we allowed to say anything about where he?
Oh no, we talk all about it. I don't think the staff watches or listens to the damn podcast because hey, but how about the defense? They stopped him yesterday. I don't think anybody on 3rd and short. I can't recall many defenses in the Pac-12 that stopped him last year, and now Oregon State's offense or defense did stop him.
No, this is Jack Coletto. Of course, we're talking about Oregon State's utility man, who was named an all-conference player last year as a utility player. He's going to be involved in all 3 facets of the game, continues to play with the offense. But to Angie's point, he was stopped yesterday in the scrimmage. And I think, again, just points to how much improvement Oregon State's front seven has made, because how often in the past had we seen, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 1 come up and you say, man, Oregon State's about to give up 15 yards here.
Yeah, I'm calling him Rack Mileto. I'm not getting in trouble like you guys are. I'm keeping the anonymity, or however you say that word. But Rack Mileto, I didn't know that he could be tackled. It was like crazy to see. But I do remember the Oregon
got pushed
game
back.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was possible. I mean, it must have been a bad day for the Hammer. But the previous day he was running, or Tuesday, whenever it was, the last practice at Research Stadium, he was running all over everyone. So I don't think it's a reason for concern. But I do remember in that Oregon game, I was like waiting for the movable object against the irresistible force, the matchup with Kayvon Thibodeau, and it did happen. And there was like a sonic boom in the Willamette Valley. Everyone lost their ability to see or hear for a minute, and it was like a stalemate. That's the only other time that I've ever even seen him close to being stopped. But he's always involved in the blocking game too. I mean, you end up in the red zone, you end up in those short yard situations. He'll move some people out of the way. Rack Mileto will. I don't know who this Jack Coletto guy you guys are talking about. I'm not getting uncredentialed. I'm keeping it. I like going to practice.
Hey, I will say last year we did see him line up as a fullback, I think, on that play where he caught a touchdown pass. So something that we've seen in the past.
Fullback. I mean, I don't care. I'm old. I've been out there. What are they going to do? Kick me out? I mean, we've seen him tight end. He's spread out wide as a wideout, fullback, running back, quarterback.
I saw him serving drinks
I think that he in
stadium bar.
He's pouring beers. He's bringing
popcorn to
security.
People.
Hey, I heard rumors of some construction people using a jackhammer at the Research Stadium construction project.
Yeah, that was him just
Jack Coletto
just
he just punching the ground. I can feel it all the way up to Sherwood. Boom.
Yeah, that was him carrying the foundation on his back. Yeah, he's great for construction projects. But yeah, I mean, he does everything, and it's crazy his workload like during practice. I mean, without saying specifically what he does, I mean it seems like he's working harder than just about anyone, just with all the positions he plays and everything he has to know. They're talking about how complex Trent Bray's system is, and this guy's a second team linebacker. Like, that's a very important role to be playing, and the fact that he can absorb all that and play as well as he does, he's one of the MVPs of this team, no doubt. He's always going to be a factor for this team.
He's also an engineering major, so I mean, the kid has some brains. So
maybe he is working on the construction project.
You know who else? That was an engineering major? Nakobe Dean. So there must be some correlation between engineering and engineering a great defense. So there you go.
It's in the DNA. I want to move to the quarterback position just because we talked to Jonathan Smith after the scrimmage yesterday and got another quote-unquote update on this quote-unquote competition that's going on in the quarterback room at Oregon State. Chance Nolan took, I think, like 95% of the first team reps yesterday in the scrimmage. He's taken about that many throughout fall camp and really doesn't seem to be giving up his grip on this job. Angie, you and I have both said this is Nolan's job all the way. Trevor, I want your opinion. Just based off of the practices you've seen, have either of the other quarterbacks in Ben Gulbranson or Tristan Gebbia done anything that makes you think this actually is a competition and it's not actually just Chance Nolan's job?
So you got the shorts on and you got like 7-on-7s and Gulbranson throws the prettiest ball. It's like, ooh, that looks nice, You get him in an in-game situation. I think Chance Nolan's just a little more poised. You just trust him to get you into the right play, make the right play, either check it down, pick you up 5 yards on the ground a little more. But Gulbranson, always throws the prettiest ball to me. I actually thought Gebbia, in a weird way, looked the most composed in that scrimmage in terms of stepping up into the pocket. I thought everyone else was had a little too much happy feet, got out of the play, didn't really let it develop, either throwing it away or kind of getting out of the pocket too early. I actually thought Gebbia did the best job of stepping it up in the pocket, but he just didn't make the throws ever. And it's like at some point, you just have to have consistency and actually completing the throws, and that seems to be Jebbia's problem. So yeah, that's aside from Dom Montiel, the X factor and the future of the Oregon State Beavers. In my coverage area, Marshfield's in there, so I watched Dom Montiel in high school last year, so I'm very, very partial to him. But aside from him, the X factor, I do think Chance Nolan's been the best so far, but I don't think he's been great by any stretch of the imagination.
I completely agree. I thought Chance was too quick to tuck and run yesterday, especially. Ben, but I think Ben is working his way into the second string spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think that's warranted. I think he does, like you said, he throws the prettiest ball, and he can move. I knew he could kind of move, but he wasn't a Sean Mannion statue, but dude can move. I was pretty impressed.
I do think that all three of these guys bring something different to the offense, and to be fair, they're very good at what they do, which is, I think, why Jonathan Smith and his staff have presented this as a competition. There is some legitimacy to the fact that all of these three guys could step in and make some plays as the starter. Nolan with his legs and his gunslinging ability, he unlocks big play potential and mobility in the pocket. Tristan Gebbia for his game management and his leadership. I think that's something at the quarterback position that's, always beneficial, regardless of, maybe if you're not the best thrower on the team. Just the fact that Oregon State's won games with him and that he's respected by all of his teammates, that's big for him. But then for Ben, the fact that he just, I think, out of those three guys, has the best pure arm talent. That's what makes him exciting. I think is part of the reason why I would like to see him on the field before a guy like Tristan Gebbia, who, of course, this is no offense to Tristan whatsoever, but I just think the ceiling is a lot higher with Ben. And if you're going to go to somebody that's not named Chance Nolan, I want to see somebody who could take the top off the defense, throw for a big play and bring something to the offense that those other guys can't.
I want to see Chance actually hit guys in stride this year. I think that's where he struggled. I don't want to see a guy have to turn around and go back and catch it at his, shoestrings. Catch a guy in stride, because Oregon State lost so many yards last year on plays like that.
And that's what we got to see in camp, right, that we haven't seen so far. I think that's just the biggest storyline in camp is what kind of improvements can this offense make? Can they become consistent? I think, you guys have been around it longer, so agree or disagree with me, but I feel like Jonathan Smith is more of the type of guy to value who gets us in the right play, who's making the right run checks over necessarily the flashy arm. Like, obviously that's important, but I think he values like a field general, right? And I think Chance Nolan's just the best at that right now. He's not necessarily the best thrower of the football. He's the best at getting him into the right play, It's
the quarterback in Jonathan Smith, just appreciating those little details from that position. Jared Hooper asks in the YouTube chat, has Gulbranson separated himself from Gebbia? And I think in terms of, like I said, his sheer passing ability, the answer is yes. But in terms of this quarterback competition, the race for, first and second string, if the reps that they're taking is any indication, no, this is a 1A and I guess I should say a 2A and 2B right now behind Chance. I just think that, like I said, the ceiling's higher with Gulbranson, but there is still something there with Tristan Gebbia, a former 4-star guy who's got talent, who is kind of a field general guy who's, going to command the offense very well.
He sits in there
Right.
and tries to make the throw and tries to go through his progression. But
Bless
to
you.
Angie's point, great point that she just made about Gulbranson is, he's way faster than people give him credit for. Yesterday, he had multiple plays that would have been first downs. You never know where he would have been actually tackled or if they're able to break the tackle based on the non-contact jerseys. But I thought he did a great job of improvisation yesterday, picking up like 7, 8, 9 yards. And he does have some speed to him. So in that sense, you add all that stuff together, the arm talent, having some improvisation skills. Yeah, he's definitely ahead of Gebbia, even if Gebbia's brain might be, a little more advanced when it comes to football knowledge.
I think that's a great place to move on to our next topic. We're going to talk a little bit about the Research Stadium construction, move on from the scrimmage. We've covered, our thoughts from the scrimmage and fall camp for the first half hour of this week's episode. But Trevor and I got the really unique opportunity to walk through Research Stadium. We're going to cover that next. But first, if you're listening to us on the audio side, if we've got things set up properly, you're going to get a quick ad break, and we'll be right back on the Damn Podcast. All right. If you are watching us on YouTube, no break for you. We're going to jump right into Research Stadium, the big construction project on campus at Oregon State. There's countless workers there every day.
Oh,
Trevor rocking the
you.
hard hat. I love it. The two of us had to
Good
put those on with our safety vests as we walked through. We
Trevor
don't have to do
stole
that
the
when we
hard
go
hat.
into research to watch practice. But Trevor, that's a good look for you there. The Home
I think
Depot
it
logo on
really
front too.
it accentuates all of my best features. But I did not steal this, surprisingly, because I'm not living on the edge like you guys while you're rule breaking. But we had this in the office. I used it as a prop on air. But yeah, we look kind of funny with our little hats on, but it was worth it. It was a great little tour, wasn't it, Carter?
Yeah, it was pretty fun. We get to kind of watch the progress every day as we drive in through the parking lot, and the days that we're watching practice and research, we're sitting 60 yards away from it, so we get to see the progress every day. They're practicing 6 days a week, so every day there's something new. But to actually get to step foot on that side and walk through Beaver Street, that concourse, check out the temporary press boxes, and just kind of taking the whole feel of the place. The thing that I think I immediately felt was just, it feels huge. It feels imposing. It's really tall. And another thing is the fact that you can see the field from the concourse. As you're in line at the concession stand, you can watch the action. You can feel the crowd around you. You can look at that huge new video board. I think it's a really cool feature. But Trevor, I want to get your thoughts, because you were there too, on just the feel of the place. It's
Yeah,
obviously not close to completion. They're still about 10 months out. But how does it feel to stand in that right now?
I'm really committing to the bit, as you can see. I'm not taking this off, but to me, it feels connected. It felt like two stadiums before, and it was kind of hard to navigate. I don't know if people care about what we have to go through as media, but we're carrying around all this stuff, and the fact that you have to like exit one side of the stadium, go completely to the outside to get back in for press conferences or anything like that into the football building is always really complicated. So I feel like now that it's 360 degrees, makes everything so much easier. If you want to go see your friends across, now you can just walk across versus basically having to like leave the stadium. So I like the connectivity of it. I like the open concourse feel. It just opens everything up, and like you said, kind of makes it feel bigger, more complete, mimicking what you see a lot at MLB stadiums. Even some MLS stadiums have that very open feel. So that was the big takeaway for me, just the connectivity. It doesn't feel like two separate buildings anymore. It feels like one stadium, and I think that kind of brings it up to date with other ones in the Pac-12.
Yeah, it's a unique experience in college football right now to
That's a
have
good
that
look,
feeling
Trevor.
where it feels like it really is just a great look for you with the hard hat.
I
Um,
appreciate it. I
no,
agree.
it's cool to step foot in there and feel like you are part of the action regardless of where you're at in the stadium. And I know that the concourse on the existing the east side at Reser it's still in the stadium. You can't actually see the field from the main concourse. But there is that that walkway that goes above the student section, and so now you will have that continuous walkway all around the stadium where you could walk 360 degrees and watch the game the entire time, which, I mean, I don't know how many college football stadiums there are that have that.
So when I'm kicked out for mentioning, Jack Coletto, I'll just walk around in circles. I'm gonna get my steps in, and I'm gonna walk around Research Stadium.
There you
You've
go.
got some alternate options now. It's great. No, I think it's gonna be awesome. The jumbotron is obviously bigger, but it also doesn't. It's not gonna be like cut off by like stats and different stuff on the side. It's gonna be a continuous video board, which is just gonna improve the experience. So when I'm like looking up, like who made that catch, with my terrible eyes, like I'll be able to see it all better. So I think there's a lot of cool new features. There's also gonna be like a museum too, like in that entrance on the new side of the building, like that's going to be awesome. You said Sean Mannion statue, and I know you were talking about his mobility, but I immediately thought, like, when you said that, like, they should make a Sean Mannion statue. So maybe they'll put one of those there. I don't know.
Yeah, the memorabilia room is going to be really cool. That's in addition to the welcome center. I think they mentioned there's going to be like a sports bar type thing in the concessions area. Obviously, all sorts of premium seating, and that's a good segue into this next part where we got some updates on the ticket sales, the completion, the timeline, and whatnot. So as far as premium seating goes, they have actually sold, I think, pretty much everything except for one living room box, or I don't have it pulled up, but there's one tiny little piece that has not been sold. Everything else a year in advance has been sold. So I think it's awesome that they got a head start on that. They have the big donations lined up and are already capitalizing on the revenue that this project is going to bring in long term. The video board that Trevor just mentioned, it's about 40 to 50% complete. I know it was 30% when we walked through, but they have added to it since then. And we've actually heard that that's going to be complete by August 20th. So a week from now, Oregon State's going to have a brand new video board, which I don't know. The two of you have both been inside Reser, and I think would both agree that you just look up and that thing just feels huge. Outside of that, the temporary press and coaches boxes, they're all in place, but they're still kind of working on the electrical and and all the Wi-Fi and everything that needs to be set up by game day. It will be done by game day. Our viewing angles aren't going to be as good as they used to be in that old press box. It'll be about 15 rows up or so. But it'll be fun to be, kind of the only ones on that side. It'll feel weird because there's nobody around us, but to watch the game from a perspective that none of the other people in that stadium are quite yet, I think it's going to be a fun opportunity for us. But Angie, you didn't get to do the walkthrough, but you've seen the project from inside Reser. What are your thoughts on how far they've come in the last 8 months? Because 8 months ago, the old grandstand was still standing.
Yeah, they're getting the seal up on that third level, so that's amazing to see. And I walked on the field. What was it, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's straight up and down. It's really cool how they're building it. Kind of in it's not a mirror image to the old new side, but it is going to be that up and down, imposing, keeping that sound in place. So huge. I was part of the team that raised the money for raising Reser in 2005. And at the time I thought it's never going to happen. They're never going to get to that other side. And so to see it happen, I'm super proud of those guys.
Yeah, and that's another cool thing is, talking about how it's not going to be maybe the most pleasing building to look at this year, but that's kind of a worthy sacrifice because fans are going to be able to come in every week and kind of see new things added to it. Like, oh, those are new seats there. Oh, they, added those stands. And I think that's going to be a really cool part of the experience. We experienced this at USC in 2018 when they were completely renovating one side of the Coliseum. No one remembers it. No one complained because no one was going to any of the games because they were 5-7. So that was kind of a benefit. But going through that, seeing those renovations happen, even though you had the year where it was ugly and it wasn't fun to go there as media members, going back the next year, you're really like, oh, that was worth it, now to have a better press box and all that stuff. So I'm very excited for that. And I can't believe neither of you mentioned that we need a faster press box elevator.
My God, yes.
Please.
Press the button. That is the most stressed out person in the building. It's not Lindgren. It's not Trent Bray. It's not any of the coaches. It's not Jack Coletto. It's not any of the players. It's the elevator operator has the single toughest job in the world. They're always stressed. They're always kind of panicked because they know they have like 13 people cramped in that elevator, all looking at them like, can you make this thing go faster? It is so dense.
Well, and then how to prioritize, do you get the media up or do you get the big boosters up? It's
They
stressful.
shouldn't have to make all those tough choices.
They shouldn't.
And they're sitting in there knowing that there's a non-zero chance that thing's getting stuck at least once per season.
Definitely non-zero. And how many times have you two made the decision? I have 50 pounds of gear on me at all times, and I've made the decision just to go down the crowd and get like beer thrown on me, people trying to steal my camera, kicking me, getting kicked by kids. I'm like, I'd rather do that than wait in the Tower of Terror. Come on. It's ridiculous. You never know when that thing's going to go to a drop.
Well, then the press box was so lovely with the pink Formica counters and the janked up plugs that, didn't work half the time. And, we have stories.
Yeah. I actually saw one of the power outlets in the front row last year actually exploded when one of the opposing media members plugged in their computer. And I said, yep, it's a good thing that this is the final year. But Trevor, I'm glad you mentioned the Coliseum and the upgrades they made there. I actually got to go there last year when Oregon State played at USC, but this is a great opportunity to move away from Oregon State for the next, the final 15 minutes or so of this week's episode. I know this is an Oregon State podcast, but when we bring a guest like the Trevor Denton onto the show, we have to pick his brain about the rest of the Pac-12. And particularly, I want to get his thoughts on realignment because of the ties to USC. So Trevor is a USC alum, a big time Big Ten fan. Grew up watching Big Ten games thinking, man, I can't wait for the Trojans to play against Iowa. Can't wait to make that trip out to New Jersey, to watch them play Rutgers. Trevor, just your perspective on USC making this move. Is it good for the program? Is it good for the Big Ten? What does it mean for the Pac-12? Just, your thoughts.
Yeah, I love that. I always thought, in the cornfields of South Central Los Angeles, that we would be a great fit in the Big Ten. But no, my first thought is that it sucks. The fact that you're replacing so much tradition, and there's great matchups in it, like USC, Penn State, a whiteout game, that's going to be awesome. USC, Michigan, that's going to be awesome because of those Rose Bowl rivalries that are happening. But you go down the list, and it's like I would rather be facing Arizona 10 times out of 10 than Purdue or Rutgers or any of these matchups. But then as I think more about it, I have so many mixed emotions. My first one being that it sucks. Like that day, I was in such a weird fog. It really affected me because the sport is like my entire life, and I love the entire sport. I grew up in SEC country in Atlanta, but we always had this affection for the Pac-12 when Arizona and Arizona State could give you a tough game, and Oregon State. I really enjoyed that era. That's when I really fell in love with college football, from Reggie Bush to Mariota to that 2010 team that won undefeated. So I say all that to say I love the Pac-12 in its traditional form. And so my first reaction was, oh, this sucks. We're losing so much tradition. But then as you think more about it, it's so hard to pick who to be mad at. It's I'm not really mad at Mike Bohn. I think it was a sinking ship in some respects. And I think they were tired of carrying a sinking ship. And anytime you're in that position of leverage, if you feel like you're carrying a conference in terms of just viewership and different things like that, not on the field, barely any of this has to do with what happens on the field. But when you're carrying it, when you at least feel like you're carrying something in terms of revenue and interest, that's just not really a tenable situation. It was the same thing that we saw in the Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma. They were so far and away had more interest than the rest of the conference. So it's hard for me to blame the athletic director, Mike Bohn, there, President Carol Folt, because I think when he came in, he said, we are going to compete for national titles. And that was something that we heard there all the time from Clay Helton. I'm here to compete for championships. But we knew it wasn't true. And we knew that in the athletic department with Lynn Swan and Mike Garrett and Pat Hayden, it wasn't true. They weren't investing in it. You'd walk around Heritage Hall and it felt like it didn't feel like a Division I program. I'm familiar with how SEC programs, how their buildings, their facilities look, and it just didn't look like that. Everything felt very out of date. Everything felt stuck in the 80s, the glory years of the 70s and the 80s. So Mike Bohn came in as an outsider. They finally got someone that wasn't part of the vaunted Trojan family, as if rushing for 1,500 yards in 1973 is a good requirement to be athletic director. They got an outsider, and they got an innovator and he brought Brandon Sosna with him, who's now gone, but two guys that are very analytics driven people. And they came in and they looked at a situation objectively. They're not thinking about tradition. They're not making any decisions about tradition. They're making decisions for how can we deliver national titles to a fan base that's been starving for that. So I'm not mad at them because I think it makes the most financial sense. I think I'm mad at just what's happened to this sport. I think it's a victim of its own success. I think everybody likes it because of regional rivalries and wackiness and Pitt, West Virginia playing every year and things like that. And it almost got too perfect and too great for its own good. And it has all these fans now flocking to it. And now the decision makers, the key ones, are making decisions that go against the very reason why this sport is so great in the first place. And those are my roundabout mixed emotions on the entire thing. That's how I feel about it.
It's a very complex situation, and I think that's a very well articulated take, just because there are so many moving pieces to it where, a lot of this has been precipitated just by college football's popularity and by the Pac-12's inability to manage itself for years, and by USC's lack of commitment to greatness, and then the resurgence in recent years under new leadership. I think all of these moving parts just kind of contributed to a perfect storm that, we saw come to a head last year with Texas and Oklahoma, but this year, particularly with USC, driving the bus, and obviously UCLA kind of hopping on as its partner there.
When UCLA just needed the money, but it's interesting. So Martin Jarmond, UCLA's athletic director, was actually a finalist for Oregon State's job back when they hired Scott Barnes. But at the time, he had no AD experience, so they went with Barnes, who had the AD experience. It's interesting to see what would have happened, if the Beavers would, not that Oregon State would have gone anywhere, but just interesting to see what the outsider kind of mentality would be.
Yeah, that would have been fascinating to see, because he's another guy, right, that came into that situation, didn't really care about tradition.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He doesn't care about any of that. He's just making the decisions best for his athletic
department. He's got to pay the bills because he's got like 50 in debt.
We're about to lose Poly Pavilion. That's going to be the Crypto.com Pavilion in like a week if we're not careful, or the lights are going to go out. But on the USC part of it, you kind of touched on it, Carter. The weird thing is, it is like the meme, we're all looking for the guy who did this. Like, it is partially their fault for being bad for so long and having incompetence that the entire conference has dwindled in value as part of USC not being relevant. So it is kind of funny that they're part of messing things up and then also getting out. And I said USC has more eyeballs, more viewership, but I've seen sentiments out there that programs like Washington State and Arizona and Oregon State have no value. And I don't buy into that at all. I think all these programs have areas that they're strong in: women's basketball, baseball. And I think in football, we have such recency bias with all this. Yeah. Wazoo was such a tough out 4 years ago, and they had Alex Grinch and Mike Leach. No one in the country, the entire nation, wanted to face those Luke Falk teams. They could beat anyone. You get them on a Friday night in Pullman, they should be favored by 2 touchdowns. So the idea that Oregon State and Washington State have no value because of where they're located, I think is ridiculous. I think every Division I team that's been D1 for a while is deeply woven into the fabric of this entire thing. And I think fans of the sport should take more of that approach to appreciating the entire thing. I think every member of D1 makes the entire thing work. And I don't like this idea floating around. I hear it all the time that like Washington State and Oregon State have no value. I just think that's that's crap.
The small market teams may not provide the eyeballs that
not everything's money. Not everything has to be about money.
Right. But I think they're integral to the fabric of what makes this sport great.
You need the underdogs. I mean, you need the underdogs. What is college football without Oregon State beating USC in 2008? Like those are key moments in the history of this sport. Everybody has their role in the hierarchy, and I don't like the idea that anybody's getting left behind in all this.
Yeah. Well, the Pac-12 as it stands still has 2 more years of USC, UCLA, and the traditional makeup of what has been this conference for 100 years. In 2022, I think it's a really intriguing season. We only have a couple of minutes here, but I want to throw some predictions out there while we have Trevor, because he is so tuned into the entire conference. I think it's a really intriguing year for the conference. I think it's wide open at the top. There's no one team that really stands out. I know Utah was picked to win the conference, but I don't think they stand out as a clear cut above anybody else. And I think there are so many teams in the middle that are ready to take a leap into that top tier that makes this year really intriguing. And I think a good advertisement for Pac-12 football when it needs it the most. So Trevor and even Angie, if you want to throw some predictions in here. Angie and I are going to run a separate Oregon State and Pac-12 prediction episode later on. But if you had to pick 2 teams and one of them to win the Pac-12 championship, who would you have competing for it, and who do you think comes away victorious with that conference crown this year?
Oh man, there's so many different ways that it could go. But I think first of all, those 2 early season games, I think, are going to determine the entire season. That Utah-Florida game is really going to set the tone, because I think we've seen in the past, Utah, their worst enemy has been Utah in September. They don't play that good of football early in the year. But if they can go into the swamp and get a win against an SEC opponent, a really talented team, man, the sky's the limit for them the rest of the year. We're talking like 11-1, but that's such a swing game. I think if they win, then I'd pick Utah. I think USC to me is interesting because I think they have the best playmakers, potentially the best quarterback. They're going to score a lot of points, but I think people are ignoring that. Like, they didn't get front seven transfers. They got one offensive lineman, Bobby Haskins. They replenished their receivers completely with Mario Williams and Jordan Addison. They didn't get a D lineman in the portal. They have the same guys. And I'm not saying any of those guys are trash or they're not going to improve, but how many rushing yards did they give up to Oregon State last year? And those are the same kind of guys in the building. USC will lose a couple weird games because of this. They could lose to a Cal, just a day where they can't stop the run whatsoever. They will lose some games like that, and that's why I have more trust in Utah to come out of the South than USC. I think people are ignoring some of the issues on the front seven, and you kind of read the tea leaves too, and I think they kind of hint at that, like, man, like Corey Foreman, former number one recruit, like he's not there yet. Some of these cornerbacks that we got just aren't there yet. So I have concerns there. And then, on the Oregon side of things, I think Dan Lanning just inherited a really good roster, and it just depends on the quarterback. But those would be my two picks to be boring. But I think there's some interesting kind of storylines within that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's an interesting year because I don't think there's one clear pick. And you mentioned three teams right there that can win it. But I'm curious if you have an underrated team that might make that leap and compete. I think Oregon State fans really hope that the Beavers can be that team this year. I know that Washington State has some sneaky optimism up there on the Palouse. UCLA with Chip Kelly in kind of a make or break year, a lot of veteran players on that team. Do you see any of these teams being maybe a bit underrated? And if they are, who's a team that they might leap that, that maybe is being hyped a little too much?
Well, my surprise team is Washington State, actually. You mentioned that just because I don't think people are talking about Cameron Ward enough. That's an NFL quarterback that you're plugging into that offensive system that we've seen be so good. They also got do you guys know the linebacker's name from Nevada? I don't see it in front of me, but they got him too, who's like potentially the best defensive transfer that was hanging around there kind of in the off season. But Washington State, to me, is going to give you a lot of tough games with Cameron Ward and just the ability to score points there. They got some continuity back with Jake Dickert kind of stabilizing things at the head coaching spot. But, man, that North is so tough. There's really no easy outs. But I think Washington State's kind of my surprise team. I think Oregon State could make some noise there. You said overrated, too. Who's kind of overrated? I don't know about UCLA. To be honest, I'm definitely not confident on like Arizona State. I think
they wear baby blue. I mean, for God's sake.
I don't know about them. I feel like we've seen the DTR thing, so many times. Like, what's kind of the ceiling there? I think winning that game against LSU in the Rose Bowl was kind of the ceiling. Is this my chance to do my Coach O? Get over here with your sissy blue shirt.
Yeah, Angie, I'm glad you mentioned the blue because I was waiting for that. The sissy
Come on
blue
up
shirt.
here. What do you say? Come on down here with your sissy blue shirt. It's like, what? Was that a threat? Was that a compliment? Do you like what I'm wearing? I was like, what's going on there? But I think if I'm going underrated, I'm going with Washington State. The only thing I think it's going to hold them back, is just playing an extremely difficult North team. But I just don't feel like people are talking about Cameron Ward enough, man. You watch the tape, that guy's ridiculous. Like, we're talking like potential like second, first round pick over there, and no one's really talking about him. Everyone wants to talk about Caleb Williams, but Cameron Ward is less behind him. I think Caleb Williams is the best guy in the conference, but Cameron Ward's less far behind him than you would maybe think. I think Oregon's fascinating, right? Because I think Dan Lanning inherited such a good foundation, such a good O-line, a D-line, pretty good DBs, receivers, but it's like, what is going to happen at quarterback? Because Bo Nix has been a roller coaster ride. Ty Thompson wasn't that good in the spring game. Like, that's the position of question for them. And the fact that that's the one question means, your season could go a lot of different directions. It's kind of like the one spot where you don't want that big of a question mark.
Pac-12 expertise from Trevor Denton. We're running out of time here. We know we got to get you out because you've got your responsibilities on TV. I want to thank you, Trevor, for having us. We'll see you again this week at fall camp down in Corvallis. Of course, Angie, thanks for joining me as always here on the Damn Podcast. Angie and I will be back next week, we're going to start going twice a week during the football season. We're going to run a couple of previews, talk some offense, talk some defense, and kind of how we see Oregon State's season shaking out as we get within 2 weeks of the season opener now, 3 weeks. It's coming up quickly. Trevor and Angie will be busy all week covering Oregon State's fall camp. So if you're in the coverage area of KVAL, KMTR, check out Trevor's great coverage. And of course, Angie and I will keep it locked down for BeaverBlitz.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Carter Bahns. You can follow him at Trevor Denton 37 and her at Angie Machado 1. Thanks, guys, for joining me this week. And thanks to all of our viewers on YouTube, our listeners, wherever you're listening to podcasts. And thanks for being a part of the reason we are joining the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network. Exciting times. Get ready for more content throughout fall camp, and be sure to stick with BeaverBlitz.com for all the latest. We'll be back next week.